There is this comforting lie we all sort of buy into about how the world works. We have this cinematic idea that the big decisions, the ones that topple governments or freeze economies, are made in high-tech situation rooms. You know the vibe.
The Hollywood version of authority. Big screens, ticking clocks.
Exactly. Very serious people in suits making these rapid-fire choices. It feels dramatic, and I think because it's dramatic, it feels manageable.
Right. It feels like there's a plot and a director. There's a narrative you can follow.
But when you actually start digging into the sources, like we did for today's deep dive, you realize the reality is so much drier. And honestly,
Yeah.
it's much more frustrating.
It's mundane.
The story of power, and more importantly, the story of paralysis, is almost always told through paper.
Or, in the modern context, endless gigabytes of PDFs. But the principle remains exactly the same. It's the fine print that rules the world. It's the footnotes.
It's the clauses. Today, we have a massive stack of files to get through. And I mean massive. We're looking at 3 distinct piles of paper that, at first glance, don't seem to belong in the same room.
Not at all.
But when you step back, they tell a unified story about friction, about why things stop working, or why they operate in the shadows.
We are looking at what I call systemic friction.
Yeah.
We have the chaotic release of the Jeffrey Epstein files, which is a story about how paper was used to obscure a network of influence.
Okay.
Then we have a political crisis in the Netherlands, which is entirely about a paper agreement that is disintegrating in real time. And finally, we have a housing market that has ground to a halt because of bureaucratic paper zoning laws and definitions that defy logic.
That's a heavy lineup. We're going to cover the mechanics of blackmail among the global elite, the brutal math of a minority government trying to survive, and the counterintuitive economics of why we should be building luxury penthouses to help the poor.
That last one usually gets people shouting at their radios, but the math is fascinating if you can, get past the emotional reaction.
We'll get there, we promise. But we have to start with the dump. The big one. The Department of Justice released nearly 3 million pages of files related to the Jeffrey Epstein case.
It is an overwhelming amount of data. It's a data deluge. And before we even touch the specific names or the scandalous details, we have to talk about the phenomenon of this release.
Right. What does it mean for this to just appear?
In the Dutch sources we're analyzing, they use a specific word for what is happening right now. Grasdwinnen.
Grasdwinnen. Break that down for me. It sounds pastoral, almost gentle.
It literally translates to something like browsing or wandering around in the grass dunes. It implies a sort of leisurely combing through something.
Okay, with you.
But in this context, it describes a modern form of open source investigation. You don't just have a few investigative journalists at the New York Times reading these files in a closed room. You have millions of people, regular citizens, amateur sleuths, Reddit detectives, digitally combing through 3 million pages simultaneously.
It's the democratization of investigation.
Yeah.
But isn't that also incredibly chaotic?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have people with zero legal context reading raw depositions and drawing huge conclusions in real time.
That is the danger. It's a hive mind, but a hive mind doesn't always have nuance. And to understand why we are seeing this chaotic release now, you have to look at the political timeline.
Why these files? Why now?
Exactly. Epstein has been dead for years. Ghislaine Maxwell is serving 20 years. The story felt, to many, like it was over.
Right. I think the general public assumption was that the book was closed. The bad guy is dead. The bad accomplice is in jail. Why reopen the wound?
Because for many, the wound never healed. There was a massive political tug-of-war behind this specific release. On one side, you had a significant push from the populist right in America, specifically supporters of Donald Trump. Their working theory was that the deep state, or the DOJ, was sitting on these files to protect powerful Democrats or, establishment figures.
The release the files chant. It became a political weapon, a way to say, they're hiding the truth from you.
Exactly. And strategically, the Trump Department of Justice actually authorized the steps for this release before they left office. It's a complicated chain of events.
But then it stalled.
But then you hit the friction. You had the John Does.
The anonymous names in the lawsuit.
Right. Dozens of legal teams representing the friends of the elite, people who were mentioned in the files but hadn't been charged with anything. They filed motion after motion to keep the records sealed.
And their argument was what? Privacy.
They argued for privacy. They argued that mere association would destroy their reputations.
Which, to be fair, is a valid legal argument in many cases. If you just went to a party and didn't know what was happening upstairs, do you deserve to be branded forever?
That is the core ethical dilemma here. It's a huge one. But ultimately, the pressure for transparency won out. Congress demanded the release. It's a rare instance where the sheer volume of public pressure broke the seal of privacy.
And when that dam broke, we realized this wasn't just an American story.
Not even close.
That was the first thing that jumped out at me in the notes, the international scope. We see Dutch names, we see Norwegian and British royalty. It really maps the globalization of influence.
It does. And this brings us to the most critical concept for anyone listening to this deep dive. If you take one thing away from this segment, it should be the danger of the guilt by association trap.
Walk us through this, because the knee-jerk reaction when you see a name, let's say a famous scientist or a politician in the Epstein files, is to assume they are part of the abuse. It's almost automatic.
That is the natural human reaction, but it is factually and legally dangerous. These files are a messy bucket. They contain flight logs, yes, but they also contain email chains about dinner parties, schedules for scientific conferences, and deposition transcripts where someone is simply mentioned by a third party.
So you could be in there because someone else mentioned your name.
Absolutely. Being the files does not equal being a predator. It doesn't even equal being a guest.
So Epstein wasn't just running a criminal ring, he was running a social network.
He was an aggregator. Think of him less as a mastermind criminal hiding in the dark, and more like a twisted version of LinkedIn in the flesh. His business model, if you can call it that, was to collect high-status people.
He was collecting people like trading cards.
Precisely. He would invite a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, a high-ranking UN official, and a famous author to a dinner. Now ask yourself, why do those people go?
They go to meet the other smart, famous people. It's the access.
Correct. They go for the networking. They might genuinely have zero idea about the dark side of the operation. But once they are there, once they are photographed, once they are in the little black book, they become part of Epstein's inventory.
His collection.
He mixes the innocent with the guilty. This provides cover for the predators. Look, this famous scientist was here, it must be legitimate, but it also gives him leverage over the innocent.
I have you on tape at my house. Even if you were just eating shrimp cocktail, the implication is that you were there. You are part of the scenery.
Exactly. Let's look at a specific case study from the files that illustrates this perfectly. The case of Yves Sturm.
The Dutch top model. This jumped out because it shows how the web caught people who weren't politicians or financiers.
Right. Now, in the files, her name appears. There are references to friendly contact. The sources even use the phrase sexually friendly, though that's open to interpretation in the legal text.
Very vague term.
It could mean flirtatious, it could mean more, but look at the transaction described in the documents.
It wasn't just come to a party, it was transactional.
No. Epstein offered her career advancement. He offered introductions to people who could make her a star. That's the carrot. He plays the benevolent patron.
Okay, that's the bait.
But then came the request. He asked her to bring young people to his parties to lower the average age.
That phrase makes my skin crawl. Lower the average age. It sounds so bureaucratic, so detached, but the meaning is horrific.
It is chilling. Now, Ekstrom's defense release through her former agent is the classic defense we are seeing across the board. She claims she was naive. She calls it a huge error in judgment. She says she didn't realize who he really was at the time.
And this is where it gets tricky for us as observers. We have the benefit of hindsight. In 2024, Epstein is a monster. But in 2008 or 2010, to a young model trying to make it in New York, was he just an eccentric billionaire who knew everybody?
That is the gray area. For some, I didn't know is a convenient lie. For others, it's the absolute truth. But Epstein relied on that gray area. He relied on the ambition of people like Sturm to populate his world.
You enter for the career boost, and you end up as a line item in a DOJ document dump 15 years later.
Your name, forever linked.
Speaking of line items that can destroy reputation, we have to talk about the Bill Gates revelation. This was specific and bizarre. And frankly, it feels like the kind of thing that wouldn't exist if it weren't written down on paper.
This is where we see the mechanics of leverage most clearly. In the files, there is an email, or rather a draft note that Epstein wrote to himself. It wasn't necessarily sent, but he kept it in his files.
A note to the file. He was documenting his leverage, like a spy.
And in this note, Epstein alleges that Bill Gates, one of the richest men in the world, the face of global public health, had sex with Russian women, contracted a sexually transmitted disease, and then asked Epstein for antibiotics.
Okay, that's already scandalous.
Yeah.
But there was a specific detail about the medication that stood out in the source material. It was the really chilling part.
Yes. The allegation is that Gates asked for the antibiotics so he could surreptitiously give them to his wife, Melinda.
Surreptitiously. That's a polite legal word for drugging his wife without her knowledge to treat an STD he brought home.
That is the allegation in the note. Now, hold on. We have to be incredibly responsible here. This is a note written by Jeffrey Epstein, a known liar, a manipulator, a convicted sex offender.
A completely unreliable narrator.
The most unreliable. We have zero medical records. We have zero proof this actually happened.
So why does it matter? If it might be a lie, why are we talking about it? Why is it in the deep dive?
Because the truth of the event almost doesn't matter for Epstein's purpose. The fact that he wrote it down means he intended to use it. He was banking information.
Right.
If true, it's nuclear-grade blackmail. If false, it's still a damaging rumor he can spread to destroy a marriage or a reputation. He could just hint at it.
It's a weapon either way.
Yeah.
And looking at Bill Gates, he spent decades curating a very specific image. The sweater-wearing, book-reading philanthropist. The man eradicating polio.
Exactly. This allegation attacks the very core of that image. It paints him as reckless, unfaithful, and deceitful towards his own family. It completely shatters that public persona.
And it's interesting to look at Melinda Friend Gates' reaction in the aftermath of their divorce. She was very public.
Yeah, she was.
She didn't mince words. She didn't play the stand-by-your-man role.
No. She has gone on record calling Epstein abhorrent and evil personified. She mentioned she had nightmares after meeting him just once. She said she regretted that meeting from the moment she stepped in the door.
Which really counters the narrative that everyone's just hanging out and didn't know. Some people walked in, saw the vibe, and walked out terrified.
Her reaction gives a lot of credibility to the idea that the atmosphere was immediately, palpably wrong. And that brings us to the strategy of survival. If you are a public figure and your name is in these files, you have two choices. You can do the Prince Andrew approach.
The I cannot sweat defense.
Yeah.
The absolute categorical denial of everything.
Deny, deflect, make up absurd alibis about Pizza Express. And we saw where that led. He is a pariah. He was stripped of his titles. He lost the court of public opinion before he even stepped into a real court.
He became a joke.
A global joke. Or you can take the path that PR experts are now advising.
Yeah.
Radical transparency.
Tell the story before the files tell it for you.
Exactly. Because of Grossduinen, because millions of people are reading these raw files, if you don't explain the context of your name being there, the internet will invent a context for you.
And the internet's version will always be worse.
Always. So transparency is the only shield against the paper trail.
It is. Because the paper trail doesn't care about your intent. It only records your presence.
That's it.
That is a terrifying thought to pivot on. We've seen how the elite used paper to hide friction. Now, let's look at a situation where the friction is happening right out in the open, in a place that is supposed to be about order and rules. The Dutch Parliament.
From the shadows of New York penthouses to the fluorescent lights of the Tweedkamer. It's a stark transition, but the theme holds. We are looking at a system that is gridlocked because the paper agreement that holds it together is flawed.
Set the scene for us. For listeners who don't follow the minutiae of Dutch politics, what is the vibe in The Hague right now?
Toxic. Hostile. Imagine a workplace where everyone hates management, but management refuses to leave. That's sort of it.
Okay.
You have a prospective coalition government trying to form. This includes the parties D66, VVD, and CDA. But there is a massive mathematical problem.
They don't have the seats.
They are a minority coalition. In a parliamentary system, usually you form a group that has 50% plus one of the seats so you can pass laws. These guys don't have it.
So what's the plan?
They are trying an experiment. They are calling it a program cabinet or new politics.
Which sounds like marketing speak for we're hoping for the best.
It is exactly that. Rob Jetton from D66 is talking a lot about constructive cooperation. The idea is we will propose laws, and we hope the opposition will be nice enough to vote for them on a case-by-case basis.
And how is the opposition responding to this invitation to be nice?
They are sharpening their knives. The opposition, led by Geert Wilders of the PVV, Jimmy Dike of the Socialist Party, and Jesse Klaver of the Green Left Alliance, is furious.
And why? What's the specific point of anger?
The spark for this fury is a very specific piece of paper, the pension accord.
The AOW, the retirement age. This is the third rail of politics everywhere, isn't it? France burned over this.
It is, but to understand the anger here, you have to understand the Dutch polder model. The Netherlands runs on consensus. It's deeply ingrained. 12 years ago, there was a massive agreement made.
A deal.
A huge deal. Unions, employers, politicians, they argued for a decade and finally signed a deal.
What was the deal?
The deal was about fairness and life expectancy. They agreed that as we live longer, we work longer, but not one for one. The formula was, for every year of life expectancy gain, the retirement age goes up by about 8 months.
But you get to enjoy 4 months of that extra year in retirement. That seems reasonable. It's a compromise.
It was hard fought. People felt it was a settled issue, but this new minority coalition has announced they want to rip that up.
Right.
They want to accelerate the rise. Starting in 2033, they want a one-to-one link. You live a year longer, you work a year longer.
They are changing the terms of the contract after it was signed.
And the opposition is taking this as a personal betrayal. Jimmy Dike from the Socialist Party used a very evocative phrase in the debate. He accused the coalition of using a slow knife.
A slow knife.
He said, it's a slow knife, but it cuts deep. It implies a lingering, painful betrayal of the working class. It's not a quick stab. It's a policy that bleeds you out over decades.
That's powerful imagery.
And Jesse Klaver called it a false start, demanding they retract the plan immediately.
But the big dog in the room is Geert Wilders. He won the election, essentially, in terms of popularity, but isn't in the driver's seat of this specific formation. What is his play?
Wilders is playing the democracy card. He looked at this minority coalition and said, essentially, you don't have the votes. If the majority of this parliament, meaning me, and the rest of the opposition says no to your plan, you don't do it, period.
He's reminding them of the math. You can't govern without us.
He's threatening immediate motions of no confidence, and this reveals the fragility of the whole experiment. If the coalition tries to force this pension change through, the opposition can simply vote them down.
Or worse.
Or worse, they can target individual ministers. They can pick them off one by one. If a specific minister tries to implement this, the opposition can file a motion of no confidence against that person. It creates a firing squad environment.
So if it's this dangerous, and they know they don't have the votes, why is the coalition doing it? Are they suicidal? Why propose a pension change that everyone hates?
That is the million-dollar question. The analysis suggests it's a strategy of buying time. The leaders, Jetten, Gesselgus, they're focused on one goal, the boards.
The boards. Describe that for us.
It's the visual finish line, the steps of the royal palace. The moment the new cabinet stands there, shoulder to shoulder with the king for the official photograph.
The photo.
It's more than that. Once that photo is taken, the government is real. It's a psychological threshold.
It's the too big to fail strategy applied to a cabinet.
Precisely. Their calculation is if we can just survive the debates, ignore the screaming, and get sworn in, it becomes much harder to fire us. They are betting that the desire for stability will outweigh the anger over the pension age.
They are hoping the opposition blinks. They are hoping the Dutch desire for order overrides the desire for revenge.
Yes. But there is another landmine waiting for them, and it's the one that blows everything up.
Migration.
Of course, the issue that toppled the last government.
And the new plans are
Exceptionally vague. Rob Jetten was grilled on this. The opposition asked, what is the limit? How many asylum seekers? Give us a number.
a hard number.
And Jetten used this incredible bureaucratic phrase. He said, we will view it when unexpected things happen.
We will view it when unexpected things happen. That sounds like a student who hasn't done the homework.
It's code for, we have no agreement, so we are going to improvise. And for parties like the PVV, who ran on strict borders, that is unacceptable. It's adding fuel to the fire.
So we have a political system that is gridlocked. A minority government clutching a papal agreement that the majority wants to shred. It's paralysis by politics.
And if you think the politicians are stuck, wait until you see the housing market.
This is the third stack of files, and this one hits closer to home for most people, literally.
It does. Because while the political gridlock is abstract, the housing gridlock means you have nowhere to sleep.
We're looking at a theory here from Anne-Marie Van Gaal, and she uses a metaphor that I think finally explains why the market is broken. She calls it the train.
It's a brilliant visualization. Imagine the housing market as a train with connected carriages. For the train to move, everyone has to step forward into the next carriage.
Walk us through the steps. Where do I start?
Okay. Step 1. People in social housing save up a bit of money and move into a starter home. A small apartment, a first purchase.
Okay, that makes sense.
Step 2. The people in the starter homes earn more, have kids, and need more space. They move into a family home.
The classic suburban house with a garden.
Step 3. The people in the family homes, the kids have moved out, they're seniors now, empty nesters. They move into senior housing, a smaller, more manageable apartment.
The circle of life, real estate edition, everyone moves up one slot. freeing up the one behind them.
Exactly. But the train has stopped. The emergency brake is on. And the blockage isn't where most people think it is.
Most people blame the investors or the lack of starter homes. That's what you hear all the time.
But the real blockage is at the top. The seniors aren't moving. The source cites a staggering statistic. There are 2.3 million single people in the Netherlands living in large family homes.
2.3 million. So you have one person, maybe a widow or widower, living in a 4-bedroom house.
Correct. And because that senior doesn't move, the young family can't move in. Because the young family can't move, the starter can't move. Because the starter can't move, the social tenant is trapped. The whole train is stuck.
So why aren't the seniors moving? Is it just sentimental attachment? Do they love their garden that much?
Partly, that's a factor. But mostly, it's because there is nowhere attractive for them to go. They look at the market and see tiny, expensive concrete boxes. Why would you leave your nice family home with a garden for that?
So there's no incentive. And this brings us to the regulatory paradox. This is where the paper reality murders the physical reality.
This is where the math really gets interesting and, frankly, depressing. It's called the 40-40-20 rule.
Sounds like a diet plan, but I'm guessing it's about zoning.
It's a requirement. Many Dutch municipalities now demand that any new housing project must be split. 40% social rent, cheap. 40% middle rent, affordable. And only 20% free market, extensive.
On the surface, that sounds noble. 80% of the homes are affordable. That's what we want. Why is that bad?
It is what we want politically. It sounds great in a speech, but economically, it's a disaster. Here's the math developers deal with. Land is expensive, concrete is expensive, labor is expensive.
Everything costs money.
You lose money building social housing. You barely break even on middle rent. The only place you make profit is the luxury sector.
So the luxury homes subsidize the cheap ones.
Exactly. But if the government says you are only allowed to build 20% luxury, the subsidy isn't big enough to cover the losses. The developer looks at the spreadsheet, sees red ink, and says, I'm not building.
So instead of getting 40% affordable homes, you get 0% of anything. The field stays empty.
Precisely. The paper rule designed to help the poor actually prevents homes from being built for the poor. It's a perfect example of good intentions leading to a terrible outcome.
And this leads to Anne-Marie van Gaal's controversial solution. Let me guess. She wants to build more luxury homes.
She argues we need to build luxury senior housing.
Yeah.
High-end, expensive, beautiful apartments in city centers with services, with a concierge, with everything.
That sounds elitist. Let's build penthouses for boomers. The optics are terrible.
It sounds terrible in a campaign speech. But follow the train logic. If you build a luxury apartment that is so good, a wealthy senior actually wants to move there.
They sell their large family home.
Which frees up the family home for a family, which frees up their starter home for a young couple.
Trickle-down housing.
By building for the rich, you unblock the chain for the poor. But try explaining that to a voter who is angry about inequality. We're solving the housing crisis by building luxury condos. It's political suicide.
It might be the only economic answer. However, it's not just the economics stopping the building. It's our old friend, NIMBYism.
Not in my backyard. And we have a tragicomic case study from a town called Nassau.
Tell us about Jan Boysen. This story really highlights the absurdity of the system.
Jan Boysen is a local landowner. He has a plot of land. It's an acre. Just a boring, flat agricultural field, nothing on it, no trees, no buildings.
And he has a plan.
A great plan, a beautiful plan. He wants to build 25 senior homes and 10 starter homes. He wants to mix the generations. The idea is that the young help the old with heavy lifting, and the old keep an eye on the neighborhood.
A real community.
No cars spoiling the view, shared spaces. It sounds like a utopia. It's exactly what everyone says we need.
It's exactly what we just said we needed. Moving seniors, helping starters.
So naturally it was blocked.
By who?
By the neighbors and the municipality. The neighbors filed complaints because they wanted to keep their free view of the empty field. They don't want to look at houses.
Classic NIMBY behavior. I have my house, screw you.
But the municipality's excuse is the real kicker. This is where the paper comes in. To stop the project, they suddenly designated this boring, empty potato field as having cultural historical value.
Cultural historical value. For a field, what culture? What history?
According to the source, there is no castle there. No ruins, no ancient battlefield. It's dirt. But the bureaucracy weaponized the word culture to freeze the land in time. They created a paper designation out of thin air to stop progress.
It is maddening. They're using the concept of history to destroy the future.
It is the ultimate systemic friction. We have a housing crisis everyone agrees we need to build. But the moment a shovel hits the dirt, the system, the paper rules, the objections, the historical designations swarms in to stop it.
It really ties everything together, doesn't it? Whether it's Epstein, the parliament, or the housing market. It's all about the gap between the paper world and the real world.
Let's synthesize this. In the Epstein files, we saw how elites used paper NDAs, settlements, privacy motions to create a legal reality that hid the physical reality of abuse. The paper said one thing, the truth was another.
Right.
In the Dutch parliament, we see a coalition trying to survive on a paper agreement that ignores the political reality that they don't have the votes.
And in Nassau, we see a municipality using a paper designation of culture to ignore the social reality that people need homes.
We have built a world so complex with so many checks and balances and lawyers and regulations that we have accidentally paralyzed ourselves. We have prioritized process over outcome.
We prioritize the feeling of justice, like the 40-40-20 rule over the result of actual houses. We prioritize the privacy of the wealthy over the truth of the victims.
So what is the takeaway for the listener? When they see these headlines, what should they look for?
I think we need to rethink our outrage. We spend so much energy being outraged at the movie villain scandals. We obsess over the Bill Gates allegation. We obsess over the list. It's juicy. It's sensational.
It clicks, it sells papers, it gets retweets.
But isn't the bigger scandal the mundane one? Isn't the empty field in Nassau the real scandal? That empty field affects your life, your children's lives, far more than whatever happened in Epstein's townhouse in 2010.
That is the provocative thought. The boring stuff is the dangerous stuff. The bureaucracy will be the villain, not the billionaire.
Why do we protest the celebrity scandals, but tolerate the regulatory paralysis that keeps our society frozen? That is what we need to ask ourselves.
It's a much harder problem to solve. It's easier to be angry at a person than at a system.
It's a call to look at the fine print, to stop looking at the smoke-filled room and start looking at the stack of papers on the desk.
That's where the power is, and that's where the friction is.
Something to chew on. Keep reading the files, keep asking questions, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.
Take care.